The old house
Right.
sits quiet in the
Let's stick her
November
close
cold,
now.
its walls thick with memory and prairie grass. At
Yes,
65,
yep.
William Hayes knows every creak in the
Right
floorboards,
there,
every
Sassy
shadow the
Pie.
afternoon sun throws across the
Yes,
plaster.
ma'am.
His grandson Michael, 12 years old and restless with youth, runs his hand along the interior wall
This
and asks the
beam
question
needs to
that
go
changes everything.
higher.
I
Grandpa, this
forgot it.
wall is really made from
Sending it
hay.
up.
Will
Wow,
looks up
it's
from the
so
fireplace where he has been
tall.
feeding
Good
small
job,
sticks into the
everyone.
flames. The fire burns low, barely more than coals, yet the room holds steady at 52 degrees despite the cold outside. He has not added fuel in 3 hours. It is. But hay burns. How come the house never burned down? The boy's hand moves across the smooth plaster, searching for answers his young mind cannot quite grasp. Will watches him and feels time folding in on itself the way it does when you reach a certain age. The present becomes thin as paper. The past grows solid as stone. There's a story about this house, Michael. A story about your great-grandmother, Margaret. About the winter when everyone said we would die. Michael turns from the wall, interest sparking in his eyes. Great-grandma Margaret, the one in the picture. Yes, though everyone called her Maggie. Will gestures to the chair beside him. Sit down, I need to tell you something about that winter. About what it means to believe when no one else does. The boy settles into the chair and Will feels the weight of 60 years pressing against his chest. He has told this story before to his own children, to visitors who come to see the famous Hay House. But never like this. Never with the knowledge that he is now older than his mother was when she died. To understand what happened, Will says slowly, you have to go back to the worst day of my life, June 1898, the day my father died. And with those words, the present dissolves. The room fades. Memory rises like water. And Will is 5 years old again, standing in the Nebraska sun. The morning his father dies begins ordinary. Will remembers this with the clarity that trauma brings the way certain moments burn themselves into the mind and refuse to fade. He is playing near the claim shanty with his sister Emily, building a fort from dried buffalo chips, while their mother tends to baby Ben inside. The draft horse comes first. Will hears the thunder of hooves and looks up to see the animal charging across the prairie, eyes white with panic, the plow trailing behind and gouging the earth. No rider, no father holding the reins. Emily sees it too. Her hand closes around Will's wrist with sudden force. Stay here. Their mother emerges from the shanty drawn by the sound. Maggie Hayes is 30 years old, thin from childbearing, in prairie life, her dark hair pulled back in a severe bun. She sees the horse. She sees the empty saddle. Her face goes white. Emily, keep the Will and Ben inside. Do not come out no matter what you hear. She runs toward the field skirts, lifted, moving faster than Will has ever seen her move. Emily pulls him toward the shanty, but he resists, craning his neck to see. In the distance, he glimpses a shape on the ground between the furrows. Too small to be standing. Too still to be alive. Inside the shanty, Emily holds Will against her chest, while he struggles to break free. She is 7, trying to be brave, but her hands shake. Emmy, I want Pa. Where's Pa? Hush, Will. Mama will take care of it. But Mama does not take care of it. When the sounds finally come from the field, they are not sounds of fixing. They are sound of ending. Will does not understand the words his mother screams, but he understands the tone. He has never heard an adult make sounds like that. Henry Hayes lives for 3 hours after the horse's hoof caves in his chest. Long enough to be carried to the shanty by neighbors who heard Maggie's cries. Long enough to lie on the bed while Will and Emily wait outside, forbidden to enter. Long enough to say goodbye, though Will does not hear those words until years later. What Will hears is the silence after. The terrible, absolute silence when his mother finally opens the door. Her face has changed. Something essential has gone out of it like a candle snuffed. She looks at her children, and Will sees in her eyes a knowledge that terrifies him more than anything else that day. The knowledge that they are alone now, that the prairie has taken their protection and left only fear in its place. Pa has gone to heaven, Maggie says, and her voice sounds like stones grinding together. Emily asks the question Will cannot form. Is he coming back? No, baby, he's not coming back. Will does not cry. He does not fully understand. Death is an abstraction to a 5-year-old mind. He only knows that his father went to the field in the morning, and now the house feels different. Colder, emptier, wrong. The funeral passes in a blur of dark clothes and whispered condolences. People bring food. Women hold his mother's hands and speak of God's plan. Men shake their heads and talk in low voices about widows and claims and what happens to families who lose their anchor. Will remembers none of their words. He remembers only the night after they buried his father, when he wakes in darkness and hears his mother moving in the main room. He should stay in bed. Emily beside him sleeps deeply exhausted by grief. Baby Ben makes soft sounds in his crate, but Will slides from beneath the thin blanket and moves to the door, pressing his eye to the gap between boards. His mother sits at the rough table, a candle burning low, surrounded by papers and coins. She counts money with mechanical precision, her lips moving silently. $21, 22, 23. She stacks the coins and stares at them as if they might multiply through force of will. Then she bows her head and her shoulders shake with sobs that make no sound. Will has never seen his mother cry. The sight freezes him in place, unable to move forward or back. He wants to run to her, to wrap his arms around her neck and tell her everything will be fine. But even at pay, some instinct tells him this is not his moment. This is her moment of reckoning, private and terrible. Emily finds him there and pulls him gently back to bed. Don't, Will. Mama needs to be alone. Why is she crying? Because Pa's gone and she's scared. Mama's never scared. Emily looks at him in the darkness, older and wiser than her 7 years. Everyone's scared sometimes, even mamas. Will does not sleep that night. He lies awake listening to the prairie wind whistle through the gaps in the shanty walls, wondering what it means to be scared, wondering if scared is the same as dying. Morning brings transformation. When Maggie emerges from the sleeping area, she has become someone else. The grief remains in her eyes, but something harder sits alongside it. Something that looks like iron. She gathers her children around the table and speaks in a voice that permits no argument. We're staying. Emily frowns. But Pa said we should go back to Lincoln. To Aunt Claire. Will sees something flicker in his mother's face. A lie preparing itself. Then Maggie does something that changes everything. She tells the truth. There is no Aunt Claire. There is no one in Lincoln. There is no one anywhere who will take us in. The words hang in the air like smoke. Emily's eyes widen. Will does not understand, but he feels the weight of it, the way the walls of the shanty seem to press closer. Pa didn't know. Maggie continues, her voice steady now. I never told him. My sister died of cholera on the boat from Russia. My parents died 2 months after we arrived. I told your father I had family because... She stops, swallows. Because he needed to believe I had somewhere to go. Then what do? Emily's voice is very small. We survive. We stay here and we prove up this claim and we survive. Will tugs on his mother's sleeve. Mama, what's survive mean? She looks down at him and he sees in her eyes something he will not have words for until he is a man himself. Determination. The kind that comes not from hope but from having no other choice. It means we keep living, baby, no matter what. That night after the children to sleep, Will lies awake again and thinks about his mother's words. There is no one anywhere. They are alone on the prairie with $23 and a shanty that lets in the wind. He does not know what winter in Nebraska means. He only knows that when his mother speaks of it, her voice changes, becomes tight with something that might be fear. He falls asleep wondering if survive is the same as not dying, and if not dying is enough. The days blur together in the way of childhood grief. Will exists in a fog of confusion and routine. He helps Emily carry water from the well. He plays with wooden blocks his father carved. He watches his mother move through the small space of the shanty with mechanical efficiency, her face closed off from the world. Then one evening, something changes. They sit around the small fire, Emily and Will on either side of their mother, baby Ben, asleep in his crate. The sun sets beyond the single window, painting the prairie in shades of amber and rust. Maggie stares out at the endless grass, and her face softens into something approaching peace. Mama, Emily says carefully, what will we do when winter comes? The question hangs heavy. Maggie does not answer immediately. She watches the grass bend and sway in the evening wind, and when she finally speaks, her voice sounds distant. Did I ever tell you children about your grandmother? My mother's mother back in Russia? Will shakes his head. He knows nothing of Russia except that his mother came from there, that she speaks sometimes in another language when she thinks no one is listening. She lived in a village on the Volga River, in a house made of mud and straw. Mud, Emily wrinkles her nose. That sounds dirty. A ghost of a smile touches Maggie's lips. It was beautiful. The walls were 2 feet thick. In summer, the house stayed cool. In winter, it stayed warm. We barely needed firewood. Will leans forward, interested now. How, Mama? Your grandmother told me once while we were plastering the walls. She said the straw holds still air. Still air holds heat. That is the secret. Not the mud, not the thickness. The air trapped inside. She falls silent, still watching the grass. Will looks at the prairie stretching to the horizon and tries to imagine walls made of straw. It sounds like a story, like something from the fairy tales Emily sometimes reads. Why didn't you bring grandmother with you to America? Emily asks. Pain crosses Maggie's face, quick and deep. She was too old to travel. She said she would wait for us, that we would send for her when we were settled. Her voice drops to nearly a whisper. She died that first winter. Alone. Will sees tears gathering in his mother's eyes and feels something crack in his chest. He climbs into her lap, wrapping his small arms around her neck. Don't be sad, Mama. She holds him tight, pressing her face into his hair. When she speaks again, her voice is muffled, but determined. I'm not sad, baby. I'm remembering. And sometimes remembering is important. The next morning, Maggie announces they are going for a walk. She straps Ben to her back with a length of cloth, takes Will's hand, and tells Emily to follow. They set out across the prairie in the early morning light, walking toward Frank Harper's claim 2 miles east. Will has never walked so far. The grass rises higher than his head, creating a green tunnel that sways and whispers with secrets. He keeps tight hold of his mother's hand, half convinced the prairie might swallow him whole. Where are we going, Mama? To see something interesting. What kind of interesting? You'll see. They emerge from the tall grass to find Frank Harper's farm spread before them. A solid sod house, 40 acres of wheat, and in the yard a mechanical contraption that captures Will's complete attention. It is huge, made of iron and wood with a funnel at one end and a strange pressing mechanism in the middle. As they watch, Mr. Harper feeds loose hay into the funnel. The machine groans and clanks, and from the other end emerges a dense rectangular block of compressed hay. Will's mouth falls open. What is that? A hay baler, his mother says. It turns loose grass into bales. Frank Harper notices them and waves, wiping sweat from his forehead. He is a solid man in his 40s, Germans like many in Arthur County, his face weathered by prairie sun. Mrs. Hayes, I was sorry to hear about Henry. Thank you, Mr. Harper. He looks uncomfortable the way men do when faced with fresh widows. His eyes slide to the children, then back to Maggie. If there's anything you need. Actually, there is something. May I see one of your bales? Frank's eyebrows rise, but he gestures to a stack near the barn. Maggie walks over, still holding Will's hand, and examines the bales with intense concentration. She runs her palm across the surface, presses hard against the compressed hay, tests the weight. Will watches his mother's face and sees something happening there. A calculation. A revelation. Mr. Harper, these bales, how much do they weigh? 60, 70 pounds each. Depends on the grass. And they're compressed tight. Tight enough you can stand on them without crushing. Maggie nods slowly. She walks around the bale, studying it from all angles. Then she does something that makes Frank Harper's face go very still. How much would you charge me for 200 bales? Silence falls over the yard. Even the chickens seem to stop clucking. Ma'am, 200 bales, how much? Frank removes his hat, runs a hand through his hair. Mrs. Hayes, what do you want with 200 bales of hay? Maggie meets his eyes steadily. Walls. The word lands like a stone in water. Frank stares at her, and Will sees in his face the same expression he has seen on others. The look that says maybe grief has broken this woman's mind. Walls, Frank repeats carefully. You mean to build a house, out of hay? My grandmother built with straw in Russia, mud bricks mixed with chopped straw. The walls held heat with almost no fuel. These bales are already compressed, already full of still air. Stack them like bricks, plaster them with lime, use just enough timber for a roof frame. Frank shakes his head slowly. Mrs. Hayes, I knew Batsa houses in the old country, but those walls were mud with straw mixed in. The mud holds everything together. Hay bales are just hay. They'll shift. They'll settle. One hard wind and your wall comes down. Wooden stakes through the bales, the plaster seals them. Hay rots when it gets wet. The compressed center stays dry. I saw your old bales, only the outer inch darkens. Mice, insects. You'll have rats in the walls by December. Lime plaster stops them. Frank looks at Maggie for a long moment. Will feels his mother's hand tighten around his own. The man's face shows the war happening inside him, between wanting to help and certainty that helping means enabling disaster. Finally, Frank sighs. I'll lend you my horses to haul bales. But Mrs. Hayes, I think you are making a terrible mistake. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. On the walk home, Will tugs his mother's hand. Mama, can we really build a house from hay? Yes, Will. But Mr. Harper said it would fall down. Mr. Harper is a good man who doesn't know everything. Do you know everything? Maggie looks down at her son, and for the first time since Henry died, she smiles. No, baby, but I know some things other people have forgotten. That smile stays with Will for days. It feels like hope, fragile and precious as bird eggs. The hope shatters when Josiah Holcomb rides up to their claim. Will is playing outside when he sees the horse approaching. The rider is tall and lean, 60 years old, but hardened by 11 Nebraska winters. Will has seen Mr. Holcomb in town. He has heard the adults speak his name with respect. This is a man who knows survival. Will runs to find his mother. Someone's coming. Maggie emerges from the shanty, wiping her hands on her apron. She watches Holcomb approach with a wariness that makes Will press close to her skirts. Holcomb dismounts, removes his hat. Mrs. Hayes, Mr. Holcomb, I heard about Henry. I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you. I also heard you've decided to stay. He looks at the claim shanty, at the gaps between the boards at the roof that sags in the middle. That's a hard choice for a woman alone. It's the only choice I have. Holcomb nods slowly. I respect that, which is why I'm here. Mrs. Hayes, I'll give you $200 for this claim and your stock. That's more than fair. It's enough for train fare back to wherever you have family. Will feels his mother's hand come to rest on his head, her fingers gentle in his hair. I appreciate the offer, Mr. Holcomb, but I'm not selling. The old man's jaw tightens. He walks around the shanty, pressing his hand against the wall. The boards flex inward under his palm. He shakes his head. Mrs. Hayes, a woman alone can't cut enough timber to survive out here. The nearest trees are 40 miles south. You'd need 8 cords minimum for winter fuel. You don't have money for that. I know. Then you'll freeze. Maybe. Holcomb puts his hat back on and his voice takes on an edge. I've buried families who thought they knew better than this country. Hay burns, Mrs. Hayes. He looks down at Will and his next words are aimed at the child. You stack hay around a stove and this boy won't freeze. He'll burn alive in his bed. Will's hand shoots out, gripping his mother's skirt. Fear floods through him, cold and sudden. Maggie's voice goes hard as iron. Thank you for your concern, Mr. Holcomb, but my children will be fine. After he rides away, Will looks up at his mother with tears threatening. Mama, are we going to burn? She kneels down, taking his face in both hands. No, baby, we are not going to burn. Mr. Holcomb is worried because he doesn't understand. But we're going to be fine. Promise. She hesitates, and in that hesitation Will sees the truth. She cannot promise. She is gambling with their lives on memories of a grandmother's house half a world away. But she says, I promise to do everything I can to keep you safe. It is not the answer he wants, but it is the truth. And somehow that matters more. The buying of bales becomes Will's education in arithmetic and desperation. His mother negotiates with 3 different neighbors, promising payment in future labor. Future preserves, future eggs from chickens, they are not certain will survive the coming cold. $40 worth of compressed prairie grass bought on credit and hope. Will watches Frank Harper's oldest son, Martin, run their own cut grass through the baler, transforming loose stems into dense blocks. Each bale that emerges feels like a small miracle, like turning air into stone. By mid-July, they have 167 bales stacked near the building site. They need 200. The hauling begins in August. The draft horse, the same animal that killed Henry Hayes, now pulls a makeshift sledge across the prairie. 8 bales at a time, 2 miles to Frank's claim, load the sledge, 2 miles back. The children ride on the empty sledge going out. Coming back, they walk alongside while Maggie leads the horse baby Ben strapped to her back. Will's job is to pick up bales that shift off the sledge. Most are far too heavy for a 5-year-old, but he drags them a few feet, puts his whole body into the effort, and feels useful. His mother always stops to help, always thanks him as if he has moved mountains. By August 8th, they have 47 bales at the site. The first hard freeze will come in 63 days. The foundation goes down first. Stones from a creek bed 2 miles east. Maggie walks there before dawn, fills a canvas sack, walks back. 12 trips a day. Emily carries 4 stones at a time. Will manages too, his small arms burning with effort. After a week, they have enough. Maggie lays the foundation herself, 16 feet by 20, a house twice the size of the claim shanty. The stones raise the first course of bales 6 inches off the ground, just enough to keep moisture from wicking up into the hay. Will watches his mother work and sees changes happening to her body. Her hands crack and bleed. She wraps them in rags that turn rust-colored by evening. Her back seizes one afternoon, leaving her bent like an old woman for 3 days. She stops eating breakfast, then lunch. The food must last. The children must eat. One evening, Will cannot find her. He searches the claim, growing panicked, until Emily points behind the chicken coop. There, hidden from view, their mother sits with her face in her hands, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Will starts toward her, but Emily grabs his arm. Don't. Mama needs to be alone. But she's crying. I know. Will stands frozen, watching his mother break apart in private. The sight terrifies him more than anything Josiah Holcomb said about burning. This is worse than fire. This is his mother, his anchor, coming undone. Later that night, when Maggie tucks him into bed, Will puts his arms around her neck. Mama, I can carry more stones tomorrow. She holds him so tight he can barely breathe. Says nothing. Just holds him until he feels her breathing steady. The walls rise through August. By the 15th, they have 89 bales stacked walls to window height. By the 22nd, 131 bales walls to the height where the roof will sit. Then Owen Caldwell arrives to collect his due. Will is helping stuff loose hay into gaps between bales when he sees the rider approaching. Something about the man's posture, the set of his shoulders, makes Will's stomach clench with instinctive fear. Mama, someone's coming. Maggie straightens from her work, one hand pressed to her lower back. She watches Caldwell approach, and her face goes carefully blank. The man dismounts without greeting, walks around the half-built structure with an expression of barely concealed contempt. He is 45, prosperous owner of the general store in Arthur, a man who measures his worth by other people's failures. Mrs. Hayes, you owe me $11. I'll pay you after harvest. Caldwell smiles without warmth. That's what Henry said last spring. After harvest, after the cattle sale, after. He looks at the hay walls and shakes his head. I don't extend credit to people building their own coffins. Will does not understand the word coffin, but he hears the meanness in it. He moves closer to his mother, wanting to protect her, knowing he is too small. The walls will be plastered, Maggie says. Lime plaster inside and out. Hay doesn't burn through plaster. Hay burns, Mrs. Hayes. Everyone knows hay burns, but you're not listening, are you? Too proud, too stubborn. Caldwell adjusts his hat. I want my $11 by end of month. If you don't have it, I'll take the cow. After he rides away, Will tugs his mother's skirt. Mama, we need our cow. For milk for Ben. I know, baby. Do we have $11? Maggie looks at the walls at the bales still needed at the roof timber, not yet purchased. She looks at her son's upturned face so full of trust, it breaks her heart. We'll find a way. But Will sees the lie in her eyes. They do not have $11. They do not have a way. School becomes impossible after Caldwell's visit. Word spreads through the community about the widow building a hay house, and suddenly Will and Emily are pariahs. On the first day of the fall session, Tommy Caldwell, Owen's 10-year-old son, starts a chant during recess. Fire trap, Hayes kid's gonna burn. Other children pick it up, circling Emily and Will like wolves. Will tries to punch Tommy in the stomach, but the older boy is too big, too strong. He shoves Will to the ground, and the playground erupts in laughter. Miss Larkin, the teacher, pulls them apart. But instead of punishing Tommy, she looks at Emily and Will with something like pity. Perhaps it would be better if you children stayed home until your mother's situation is resolved. Walking back to the claim, Emily holds Will's hand tight. He is crying, nose still bleeding from where his face hit the dirt. Why do they hate us, Emmy? They don't hate us, they're scared. Scared of what? Of Mama being right, of having to admit they were wrong. Will does not understand, but he feels the weight of it. Being different, being alone, having only each other against a world that wants them to fail. That night, for the first time, he dreams of fire. Dreams of walls made of hay bursting into flame, of his baby brother screaming, of his mother's hands burning as she tries to save them. He wakes gasping and finds Emily already awake beside him. I had the bad dream too, she whispers. They lie in the darkness listening to the wind, and Will wonders if believing in something is the same as that something being true. September arrives with the first hints of cold. Mornings frost the prairie grass white. The days grow shorter. The pressure builds like storm clouds on the horizon. One afternoon, Frank Harper visits the building site. He says he is checking on the horses he lent, but Will watches the man's face and sees something else. Guilt. The kind that sits heavy in the chest and makes breathing difficult. Frank examines the walls now complete to roof height, 178 bales in place. He touches the wooden stakes driven through tests, the stability, and his expression remains carefully neutral. You've made good progress. Not enough, Maggie says. I still need 22 more bales to finish properly, and $34 for roof timber. How much do you have? $12. Frank's jaw tightens. He looks at the walls, looks at Will and Emily, standing nearby, looks anywhere but at Maggie's face. I should go. After he leaves, Will asks his mother why Mr. Harper looks so sad. He wants to help but doesn't know if he should. Why not? Because helping means believing. And believing is hard when everyone around you says you're wrong. The words settle into Will's bones. He thinks about them for days, trying to understand why grown-ups make things so complicated. 2 miles away in Frank Harper's sod house, a different conversation unfolds. Martha Harper confronts her husband over the supper table while their 6 children eat in silence. You've been working for Caldwell against that widow. Frank's fork stops halfway to his mouth. How did you know? I'm your wife. I know when you're carrying guilt. Martha's voice is quiet but edged with steel. Owen Caldwell paid you to report on her progress, to tell him if she was failing. We needed the money. We're not starving, Frank, but that woman might be. Her children certainly are. Their oldest son, Matthew, speaks up. Pa, Mrs. Hayes asked me to help set the roof beams. Should I go? Frank's face hardens. No, stay away from there. That ain't right, Pa. The words hang in the air. Frank looks at his son, sees the judgment there, and feels something crack inside his chest. He has survived by being careful, by not taking risks, by knowing which way the wind blows. But caution has led him here to taking blood money from a man who preys on widows. That night, Frank cannot sleep. He lies beside Martha and watches moonlight paint patterns on the ceiling. When dawn finally comes, he makes his decision. He loads 30 hay bales onto his wagon, his own bales from his own stack. Martha watches from the doorway and says nothing, but when he glances back, she nods once. Permission. Absolution. Frank drives the 2 miles to Maggie's claim and finds her trying to calculate how to build a roof with half the timber she needs. She looks up at the sound of the wagon, and her face shows nothing. Not hope, not expectation, just exhaustion. Mrs. Hayes, I brought you something. Will and Emily emerge from the shanty drawn by voices. Will sees the bales on the wagon, and his heart leaps. Are those for us, Mr. Harper? Frank climbs down slowly as if his body aches. They are. Maggie walks around the wagon counting. 30 bales, exactly what she needs to finish the exterior properly, to fill the gaps, to have some leftover for repairs. I can't pay you. I have $12. The roof timber will cost $34. I need every penny. Frank removes his hat, turns it in his hands. It's not charity, Mrs. Hayes. It's restitution. The word means nothing to Will, but he sees his mother's face change. Understanding dawns there, and with it anger. Restitution for what? Caldwell paid me $5 to watch you, to report back if you were failing, to discourage you. Frank's voice drops. I took the money. I'm ashamed. These bales are what I owe you for betraying you. Silence falls over the claim. A meadowlark calls from the prairie grass. The wind moves through the half-finished walls, making a sound like breathing. Will tugs his mother's skirt. Mama, what's betraying? Maggie kneels down to his level. It means someone broke a promise. Did Mr. Harper break a promise to us? No, Will. He broke a promise to himself. But now he's fixing it. Will looks at Frank Harper, at the man's weathered face and bent shoulders, and makes a decision that surprises everyone, including himself. He walks over and holds out his hand the way he has seen grown men do. Thank you, Mr. Harper. Frank stares at the small hand extended toward him. Then he kneels, takes Will's hand in his own work-roughened palm, and shakes it solemnly. You're welcome, son, and I'm sorry. Something shifts in that moment. An alliance forms, fragile but real. Frank and his son Matthew stay to help unload the bales. Then Frank makes an offer that changes everything. Let me help with the roof. My boy and I can set the beams. We'll work for food if you have it. Maggie's eyes fill with tears she will not let fall. I can't afford to feed 3 more people. Then we'll bring our own food. Mrs. Hayes, please. Let me do this one thing right. The roof goes up in the last week of September. Matthew teaches Will how to hand up tools, how to hold the measuring string taut, how to be useful without getting in the way. For the first time since his father died, Will has a purpose beyond surviving. He is building something, creating shelter with his own small hands. The ridge beam goes up first, then the rafters. Frank and Matthew work with efficient precision, measuring twice, cutting once, wasting nothing. Maggie buys the minimum timber she can manage, $34, that leaves her with $9 for winter. The roof boards go down, tar paper on top, then sod cut from a patch of clay-heavy ground along Mud Creek piled 18 inches thick for weight and insulation. The roof leaks in 3 places during the first rain. They patch with more tar paper, more sod. October arrives with the first serious cold. Now comes the plaster. Lime sand water chopped straw. Maggie mixes it in a wooden trough and shows Will and Emily how to apply it to the interior walls. 1-inch thick fire protection and insect barrier, the smooth white surface covering the rough hay beneath. Will loves this work. He is given a small section low on the wall, just 2 feet square, and told to make it smooth. He works with his tongue between his teeth, spreading the plaster with intense concentration. It takes him all afternoon. When he finishes, his section is rougher than the rest, the surface uneven, and marked with child-sized handprints. Can I do more, Mama? Maggie looks at his section and smiles, the first real smile Will has seen in months. That's perfect, Will. That's your part, your contribution. The word fills him with pride so intense it hurts. His contribution, his mark on the house that will save them. The first frost arrives on October 3rd. The ground freezes at night. The plaster must be applied in afternoon warmth when the sun has thawed the surface enough to bond. Maggie works from noon until dark, racing against the calendar. October 7th, interior plaster done. October 8th, exterior plaster started. Each day colder than the last. Each day the geese fly south in long formations. Each day the wind grows teeth. On October 14th, 2 hours before sunset, Maggie smooths the final section of exterior plaster. She steps back and looks at what she has built with bleeding hands and borrowed money and sheer stubborn will. A house, 16 feet by 20, walls 2 feet thick, plastered smooth inside and out. 1 door salvaged from the claim shanty. 2 windows with glass bought in August for $4 precious. A stovepipe jutting from the roof. It looks like an ordinary house. You cannot see the hay beneath the plaster. You cannot see the months of doubt and exhaustion and terror. You can only see shelter where before there was nothing. Will runs his hand along the exterior wall. The plaster is cool and smooth, like touching something from a dream made solid. Is it done, Mama? It's done. Can we live in it now? Maggie pulls him close and her voice shakes. Yes, baby. We can live in it now. Snow begins falling at sunset on October 15th. Light flurries at first, then heavier. Maggie moves the children into the new house that night. The stove from the shanty fitted through the hole cut in the roof. The beds and table and chairs. The coffee tin with $9 inside, all the money they have left. She lights a fire in the stove. The children sit on the bed and watch. Flames catch. Heat radiates outward. The interior temperature climbs. 50 degrees. 50 degrees, 60. It's warm, Emily whispers, as if speaking too loud might break the spell. Will presses his hand against the interior wall. The plaster is smooth and dry, slightly cool to the touch, but nothing like the icy planks of the claim shanty. More importantly, the wind that howls outside cannot be heard inside. The walls absorb it, muffle it, transform it into silence. Mama, I can't hear the wind. No, the walls are too thick. The sound can't get through. Baby Ben laughs at the firelight, at the shadows dancing on the ceiling. He does not understand what has been built for him. He only knows that he is warm and his mother is smiling. That night, Will sleeps without fear for the first time since his father died. The house holds them like hands cupped around a candle flame. Gentle, protective, strong. November arrives with temperatures that drop below zero. Maggie keeps a thermometer outside the door, another inside on the kitchen shelf. The differences astonish even her. November 15th, 12 degrees outside, at dawn 41, inside without a fire. With a small fire, 3 twisted hay sticks, the interior rises to 58. November 20th, 5 degrees outside, 58 inside with fire. December 1st, 8 below zero outside, 54 inside. The fuel consumption is almost miraculous. The claim shanty would have required a roaring fire all night to maintain 40 degrees. The hay house holds heat for hours after the fire dies. The thick walls absorb warmth during the day and release it slowly through the night. Will takes responsibility for checking the thermometers each morning, announcing the temperatures with the seriousness of a weatherman. He loves the numbers, loves watching the proof accumulate that his mother was right. But Josiah Holcomb is not convinced. He rides by in early November, sits on his horse looking at the house for a long time. Smoke rises from the chimney. Children's voices come from inside. Maggie emerges when she notices him, and something in her posture suggests a challenge. Warm autumn doesn't prove anything, Holcomb says. Wait until January. Wait until a real blow comes. He rides away without dismounting, without acknowledging that the house stands solid and the children are thriving. Will watches him go and feels anger for the first time in his life. Real anger, hot and righteous. Why won't he believe us, Mama? Some people need to see the worst before they accept the best. Owen Caldwell tells people in town that Maggie is just lucky it hasn't burned yet. He still expects her to fail. He still wants her claim. But his voice has lost some of its certainty, and when people ask about the Hayes widow, he changes the subject. Frank Harper comes for coffee in late November. He sits inside, feels the warmth, touches the walls with something like reverence. Finally, he speaks. It's working. So far, Maggie agrees, but the deep cold hasn't come. No, it hasn't. Frank looks at the walls, listens to the wind outside that cannot find its way through. I hope I was wrong about everything, Mrs. Hayes. I hope you prove us all wrong. She pours in more coffee. So do I, Frank. So do I. The mild weather holds longer than anyone expects. 5 below, 10 below, 15. The hay house maintains temperatures above 40 with minimal fuel. Will and Emily play inside warm and safe, while neighbors burn through cords of wood trying to heat drafty frame houses. But the old-timers watch the sky. They see signs Will is too young to interpret. A heavy ring circling the moon. Livestock restless in their pens. Birds flying south in confused patterns. On January 18th, Josiah Holcomb tells his ranch hands to bring the cattle close. Storm coming, he says, a real one. The morning of January 19th dawns mild. 28 degrees, partly cloudy. Will plays outside with Emily, building a snow fort, their breath fogging in the air. The sky to the northwest is clear. By noon it is not. Dark clouds build on the horizon, an anvil formation rising higher than anything Will has ever seen. The wind, which has been light from the south, dies completely. Then it shifts, coming now from the north, and the temperature begins to drop. Maggie calls the children inside. She brings the cow and chickens into the lean-to shed. She fills every bucket and pot with water from the well. By 2 o'clock, the temperature has dropped to 18. By 4, snow is falling. By 6, Will cannot see the well 20 feet from the door. The blizzard has arrived, and now they will discover if the walls his mother built from prairie grass and desperate hope are strong enough to hold back death itself. The wind hits before midnight with the sound of something alive and furious. Will wakes not to howling but to screaming, as if the prairie itself has torn open and is shrieking its rage at the sky. He sits up in bed, heart hammering, and reaches for Emily in the darkness. "Emmy, do you hear that?" His sister is already awake, pressed against the wall with her hands over her ears. "It's just wind, Will. Go back to sleep." But this is not wind. Wind is something you live with on the prairie, constant and ordinary as breathing. This is something else. Something that wants inside. Something that will kill them if it finds a way through. Will climbs out of bed and runs to his mother. Maggie sits by the stove, feeding it small amounts of twisted hay, her face illuminated by firelight. She opens her arms, and Will burrows into her lap, pressing his face against her chest. "Mama, I'm scared." "I know, baby, but we're safe inside. The walls will hold us." Will listens to his mother's heartbeat and tries to believe her. Outside, the storm screams and claws at the house. He expects the walls to shake the way the shanty always did, expects to feel the building sway and groan. But the hay house stands motionless. The 2 feet of compressed grass and lime plaster absorb the wind's fury and give back nothing. The scream outside becomes a murmur inside, distant and muffled, as if the storm is happening to someone else. Maggie carries Will to the thermometer on the wall. "See, 47 degrees. We're warm. We're safe." "What's it outside?" She cracks the door, 2 inches snow immediately swirling through and reads the outdoor thermometer by the light of the stove. 31 below zero and falling. Will does not fully understand the numbers, but he understands the difference. 78 degrees of separation between life and death, between warmth and freezing, between his mother's gamble paying off and their bodies found come spring. "Can I sleep with you tonight, Mama?" Of course. She carries him to her bed, tucks him in beside her, and holds him close. Ben sleeps in his crate nearby, his breathing steady and peaceful. Emily climbs in on the other side, and the three of them lie together, listening to the storm that cannot reach them. Will falls asleep to his mother, singing softly in Russian words he does not understand but whose meaning is clear. "You are safe. I will protect you. The walls will hold. Morning brings no relief." Will wakes hoping to see sunlight, but finds only white. Snow flies sideways past the window, driven by wind that has not slackened. He cannot see the lean-to 15 feet away, cannot see anything but the storm. "When will it stop, Mama?" "I don't know, baby." The day passes in strange suspension. They are trapped inside, but comfortable, warm enough to move about in shirt sleeves, while outside the temperature drops to 38 below zero. Will plays with his wooden blocks, builds towers, and knocks them down, builds them again. Emily reads to him from her primer, but the words wash over him, unheard. He is too aware of the storm, too conscious that they are cut off from the world. At noon, Maggie tunnels through the snowdrift to reach the lean-to and milk the cow. Will watches from the window, terrified she will disappear into the white and never return. She vanishes into the tunnel she has dug. Minutes pass, 5, 10. Will's breath fogs the window. Then she emerges carrying a bucket of milk, her face red from cold but smiling. "The cow is fine, the chickens are fine, the animals share our wall. Enough heat leaks through to keep them from freezing." The thermometer shows 35 below. The interior holds at 47 degrees. The fuel consumption remains minimal. 3 twisted hay sticks every few hours, less than a quarter of what neighbors burn. But Will does not know yet what is happening 2 miles away, in houses that are failing, where desperation is turning to tragedy. John Peterson's claim shanty has become a death trap. The single wall frame construction, gaps stuffed with rags and newspaper, cannot hold back this kind of cold. By midnight on January 19th, the interior temperature drops to 32 degrees. Freezing. Inside the house, Peterson feeds the stove every log he can spare, these then logs he cannot spare, watching his woodpile shrink with each passing hour. By dawn on the 20th, the temperature inside is 28 degrees. His wife huddles in bed with their 3 children under every blanket they own. The youngest, a boy of 4 and a girl of 6, cry without stopping. The eldest, 9-year-old Tommy, the same boy who bullied Will at school, has gone silent. His toes have turned white during the night. Peterson makes a decision that nearly kills him. The barn is 40 yards from the house. He has hay stored there enough to keep the fire going. He ties a rope around his waist, fixes the other end to the door handle, and steps into the storm. The wind knocks him backward on the first step. He forces himself forward, head down, one hand following the rope. At 15 yards, he loses sight of the house. The snow is not falling. It is flying horizontally, a solid wall of white that erases everything. He cannot see his hand in front of his face. He stumbles forward, meaning to go straight, but the wind pushes him sideways. He walks in what he thinks is the right direction. After 20 minutes, his wife finds him by pulling the rope, hauling him hand over hand back toward the house. He is 10 yards from the barn, walking in the wrong direction. His face is white. His fingers are white. He cannot speak. They survive, but Tommy Peterson loses 3 toes on his right foot. His sister Sarah loses 2 on her left. John Peterson loses the tips of 4 fingers. The storm marks them permanently, a price paid for living in a house that could not protect them. 3 miles north, Harold Strand has already paid a higher price. His dugout holds heat well better than a frame house, but dugout chimneys clog with snow. Strand clears the chimney twice on the 19th. He does not clear it a third time. Perhaps the cold becomes too severe. Perhaps he falls asleep. Perhaps the carbon monoxide takes him before he knows anything is wrong. 2 days after the storm ends, they find him sitting in his chair by the stove, frozen solid. The fire has burned out. The chimney is packed with snow and ice. The interior temperature of the dugout had been above freezing when he died. He suffocates on invisible poison while warmth still lingers in his home. Will learns these things later, but even trapped in his own house, he senses catastrophe unfolding. The storm continues through the 20th without pause. The temperature holds at 35 below. The wind maintains its relentless pressure. Then in the afternoon, baby Ben begins to cough. At first it seems like nothing. Babies cough. But Will watches his mother's face and sees fear bloom there like frost on glass. She picks up Ben, feels his forehead, and her expression changes completely. "Emily, get me cold water. Will bring me towels." "What's wrong with Ben?" Will's voice rises with panic. "He has a fever, but he'll be okay." Will hears the lie. Ben's face is flushed red. His breathing sounds wrong, harsh, and barking. The sound echoes off the plaster walls, amplified and terrible. "Mama, what's that sound he's making?" "It's croup. It makes breathing difficult." Maggie's hands shake as she bathes Ben's forehead with cool water. "I need medicine." "Do we have medicine?" Long pause. "No." The word lands like a stone in deep water. No medicine. Storm raging outside. Doctor 60 miles away in North Platte. Nearest medicine 7 miles in Arthur. Might as well be 700. They are trapped with a sick baby and no way to help him. Will tries to be useful. He fetches water, wrings out cloths, holds towels. But his hands are too small, his efforts clumsy. Water spills everywhere. He starts to cry. "I'm sorry, Mama. I'm not doing it right." She pulls him close with one arm, still holding Ben with the other. "You're doing perfectly. Just being here helps me." Ben's fever climbs through the afternoon. His cough worsens. By evening, his breathing has become shallow and rapid, each breath a struggle. Maggie rocks him and sings Russian lullabies, her voice breaking on words Will does not understand, but whose meaning is unmistakable. "Please live. Please breathe. Please stay with us." Will sits beside Ben's crate with his hand resting on his brother's small chest, feeling it rise and fall. Emily joins him, and together they keep vigil while the storm screams outside, and their mother's face shows the kind of fear that stops words. "Emmy, is Ben going to die?" Emily's voice is steady, but her eyes are wet. "No, Mama won't let him." Will wants to believe this, wants to believe his mother has the power to hold back death the way the walls hold back cold. But he is 5 years old and learning that wanting something does not make it true. Night falls and Ben's breathing grows worse. The barking cough becomes wet and rattling. His skin turns gray. He stops crying, stops fussing, just lies in Maggie's arms with eyes that do not quite focus. Will prays in the way children pray, with simple directness. "Please make Ben better. Please stop the storm. Please send help." And miraculously, impossibly, help comes. Hoofbeats outside, faint at first, then louder. Maggie's head snaps up. Will runs to the window, but sees only white. Then a shape materializes from the storm, a figure on horseback so covered in ice and snow, he looks like a ghost. Frank Harper. He has ridden 2 miles through the worst blizzard in Nebraska history. His sod house, better built than Peterson's shanty, still dropped to 38 degrees during the storm. His family huddled under blankets, burning through fuel at a terrifying rate. But Frank could not shake the feeling that something was wrong at the Hayes place, could not stop thinking about the widow and her children, could not ignore the debt he owed. So he wrapped himself in every layer he owned, saddled his horse, and rode into the storm that is killing people. Maggie opens the door and Frank staggers inside, ice crusted in his beard, his lips blue, his entire body shaking. He can barely speak, but he forces out the words. What's wrong? Ben, fever, croup, or worse, no medicine. Frank looks at the baby in Maggie's arms, hears the terrible rattling breath, and makes his decision instantly. Arthur, 7 miles, I can make it. The drifts. I'll go around, road south is clearer. He looks at Will, standing nearby, eyes wide with hope and terror. You be brave, son. Help your mama. Will nods, trying not to cry, trying to be the man his father would want him to be. Frank rides back into the storm. Will watches from the window until horse and rider disappear into white nothing. Then he turns to his mother. Will he make it? Maggie's face shows what it cost her to be honest. I don't know, baby. I hope so. The waiting is worse than the storm, worse than the cold, worse than anything Will has ever experienced. He sits by Ben's crate, holding his brother's tiny hand, talking to him in a steady stream of words. It's okay, Ben. Mr. Harper's getting medicine. You're going to be better soon. You have to be better because Emmy and me need you. Mama needs you. Please don't go away like Pa did. Emily sits beside Will, and they keep vigil together, two children, watching their baby brother fight for breath, powerless to help beyond being present. Maggie rocks Ben and sings. Her voice cracks on the high notes. Tears run down her face, but she does not stop singing. Russian words Will not learn the meaning of until he is grown. Sleep, little one. The walls will hold you. You are safe. You are loved. Do not go where we cannot follow. Hours pass. The storm continues. Ben's breathing grows more labored. Will feels time stretching and compressing, minutes that last hours, hours that vanish like smoke. Then when the light outside begins to change from white to gray, hoofbeats again. Frank returns with Matthew beside him. Both men look half-dead, faces white with frostbite, hands frozen to the reins. But Frank carries a bottle. Quinine, purchased from Owen Caldwell's store, paid for with money Frank can barely afford, brought through a storm that has already killed. Maggie measures the dose with shaking hands, spoons the medicine into Ben's mouth. The baby coughs, fights, but swallows. A second spoonful. He swallows again. Now more waiting. Waiting to see if the medicine works or if they brought it too late. Frank and Matthew sit by the fire warming themselves. Will brings them water. Emily offers them bread. They sit in silence, watching the baby breathe. Around midnight, Maggie wakes Will where he has fallen asleep in the chair. Will, feel his forehead. Will reaches out with trembling fingers. Ben's skin is cool, not burning. The fever has broken. Relief floods through Will so powerfully he starts crying. Maggie pulls him close and they cry together, all the fear and tension of the past days releasing in great shuddering sobs. Frank Harper watches this and feels something shift in his chest. He has spent his life being careful, being practical, knowing which way the wind blows. But tonight he rode into a killer storm for a woman who owed him nothing, for children who were not his own. Tonight he learned what it means to do the right thing, not because it is profitable, but because it is right. The house, Frank says quietly, it's warmer than mine, warmer than Holcomb's. Maggie wipes her eyes. We've burned less than a quarter cord over 2 days. My sod house ate through 3 cords. Frank shakes his head. I told you it wouldn't work. I was wrong. The storm breaks on the morning of January 21st. Will wakes to silence, not the absence of sound, but the absence of the storm's scream. He runs to the window and sees shapes emerging from white. Up to the house. This time he dismounts up to the house. This time he dismounts. Stands in the snow, looking at the walls that held. The plaster shows no cracks. The structure stands solid. Smoke rises from the chimney. Children's voices come from inside. Will runs out before his mother can stop him. Mr. Holcomb, we didn't burn. We didn't freeze. The house worked. The old man looks down at Will for a long moment. Something breaks in his weathered face. He kneels in the snow, bringing himself to the boy's level. I see that, son. I see that clearly. Maggie emerges, wiping her hands on her apron. Holcomb stands, removes his hat, and speaks words that cost him dearly. Mrs. Hayes, I told you those children would freeze or burn. I was wrong. You were worried. No, his voice hardens with self-judgment. I was arrogant. I thought I knew everything about surviving here. He looks at the house, at the walls made of prairie grass. My frame house damn near killed me. Dropped to 38 inside. I burned 3 cords in 2 days and still couldn't keep above freezing. He tells them about the Peterson children losing toes inside their proper house, about Harold Strand found dead from carbon monoxide, about houses that failed while the Hay House stood strong. How did you know? Maggie's answer is simple. My grandmother. Still air holds heat. She taught me that when I was young. I believed her. Holcomb reaches out and presses his palm against the exterior plaster, holds it there. I'm going to tell everyone. Some won't believe me, but some will. Word spreads through Arthur County like fire across dry grass. People come to see the house, one by one, then in groups. The Nielsens arrive first. Their frame shanty nearly killed them during the storm. Mrs. Nielsen walks around the hay house with tears streaming down her face, touching the walls as if they might be illusion. Show me everything, she says to Maggie. Please, I need to know how to do this. Maggie spends a full day at their claim drawing diagrams in the dirt with a stick. Foundation height, bale placement, stake spacing, plaster mixture ratios. She refuses payment when Mrs. Nielsen offers eggs. My grandmother didn't charge me for the knowledge. Why should I charge you? The Mullers come from 12 miles west, having heard from Frank Harper. A farmer rides up from Hyannis sent by Miss Larkin, who has changed her tune about the Hayes widow. 3 families Maggie has never met arrive in a single afternoon, all carrying the same story. Josiah Holcomb told us to come. Said you built something we need to see. Will watches these visitors with quiet pride. He shows them his section of plastered wall, the rough patch made by 5-year-old hands, and tells them solemnly, this is my contribution. Mama said it's perfect because it's mine. The adults smile, but they understand. This child helped build the house that saved his life. That means something. By February, Frank Harper has begun construction on a hay bale addition to his sod house. He improves on Maggie's technique, adding a second coat of plaster for extra protection, experimenting with different stake placements to handle the stress. Martha watches her husband work with something like wonder. You're different now, she says one evening. How so? Lighter, like you put down something heavy you'd been carrying. Frank understands. The guilt of taking Caldwell's money has lifted. He has made restitution not just to Maggie, but to himself. That matters more than he expected. In late February, a gathering happens at the church in Arthur that changes everything. Josiah Holcomb stands at the front, his weathered face serious, and addresses the congregation of perhaps 50 souls. I have something to say about Owen Caldwell. The room goes still. Caldwell sits in the 3rd row, his face flushing red. Most of you know I offered to buy the Hayes claim last summer. $200. Fair price. Holcomb's eyes sweep the room. What you don't know is why I offered, and what Owen Caldwell didn't tell any of us. He pauses, lets the tension build. The Union Pacific is surveying a route through this county. They'll be buying right-of-way within 2 years. Land values are going to triple, maybe more. Murmurs ripple through the congregation. Caldwell's face goes from red to white. Owen Caldwell knew. He's been buying up claims, cheap, planning to sell high to the railroad. Holcomb's voice hardens. He paid Frank Harper to spy on the Hayes widow, to report if she was failing, to discourage her, because her claim sits right on the proposed route. Frank stands up from his pew. It's true, Owen paid me $5. I took it. I'm ashamed, but I'm here to testify that what Josiah says is true. Martha stands beside her husband. I heard Owen offer more money, heard him say he needed that land. The pastor, Reverend Mills, looks at Caldwell. Owen, do you deny these charges? Caldwell stands, his face twisted with anger. This is speculation. Gossip. You have no proof. I have your ledger. Holcomb holds up a small book. Your clerk showed it to me. Thought I was interested in investing. Showed me every claim you have been trying to buy, every family you've pressured. The Hayes claim is circled in red with the note, railroad route, priority acquisition. The room erupts, people shouting, women crying, men standing up, fists clenched. The pastor raises his hands for quiet. Owen Caldwell, I think it's best if you leave. You have no authority over me. Perhaps not, but this is God's house, and you've brought sin into it. Greed, exploitation of a widow. Leave now or these men will escort you out. Three farmers stand moving toward Caldwell. He looks around the room, sees no allies, and stalks out. The door slams behind him. Will watches all this from his mother's side, not fully understanding, but sensing vindication. The mean man who wanted to take their cow has been exposed. Justice in its way has come. But something else happens that Will does understand completely. As people file out of church, Tommy Caldwell stands alone by the door. His father has ridden off without him. The boy's face shows shame and confusion and something that might be fear. Children who played with him yesterday now avoid his eyes. Will walks over. Emily tries to stop him, but he pulls free. Tommy. The older boy looks down and Will sees tears on his face. Go away, Hayes. Your family won. My pa is ruined. Just go away. Want to see our house? Tommy's head snaps up. What? The hay house. It's really warm. And we have cookies. Mama made them yesterday. Will holds out his hand. Come see. For a long moment, Tommy just stares. Then slowly he reaches out and takes Will's hand. His grip is tight, desperate, the grip of a drowning person finding a rope. As they walk toward where Maggie waits with the wagon, Tommy speaks quietly. I'm sorry I pushed you, and for the things I said. It's okay, your pa made you mean, but you don't have to stay mean. Tommy's voice breaks. I don't know how to be anything else. Then learn, I'll help you. That afternoon, Tommy Caldwell sits in the hay house eating sugar cookies and touching the walls with something like reverence. Will shows him the rough section he plastered, and Tommy traces it with one finger. You really helped build this. Yeah, Mama said everyone has to contribute. Tommy looks at Maggie, at this woman his father tried to destroy, and finds her watching him with something that is not anger. Not pity either, just acceptance. Mrs. Hayes, I'm sorry for what my pa did. Your father's sins aren't yours to carry, Tommy. You're welcome here anytime. The boy starts crying, then really crying, and Maggie pulls him close the way she pulls her own children close. Will sits beside them, his hand on Tommy's shoulder, and feels something shift in the world. Mercy is harder than justice, but it matters more. Spring comes to Arthur County with the smell of thawing earth and new grass pushing through old snow. By March, Frank Harper has completed his hay bale addition, and his family moves into walls that hold heat with a quarter of the fuel their old sod house required. By April, 2 more families have begun construction using Maggie's technique. In May, a circuit rider from the territorial government visits to inspect unusual construction methods reported in the region. He examines Maggie's house, takes extensive notes, measures wall thickness, and tests plaster strength. At the end of his inspection, he sits at her table drinking coffee. Mrs. Hayes, do you realize what you've done? Built a house. You've solved a problem that's killed hundreds of homesteaders. Shelter that's cheap, effective, and uses materials available on every claim. He taps his notes. I'm writing a report. This technique needs to spread. By the winter of 1899 to 1900, 7 hay bale buildings stand in Arthur County. Frank Harper has become a builder, teaching the technique to anyone who asks. By 1901, when Maggie proves up her claim after 5 years, the number has grown to 15. By 1905, approximately 30 straw bale structures dot the landscape of western Nebraska. The method spreads into adjacent states: Kansas, Colorado, Wyoming, South Dakota. Farmers build houses, churches, schools, barns, storage buildings. The walls hold through blizzards and droughts and windstorms that flatten conventional frame construction. A church in Alliance stands for 40 years with its original hay bale walls intact. A school in Broken Bow educates 3 generations of children in classrooms that stay warm in winter, cool in summer. Maggie Hayes becomes quietly famous in a way that embarrasses her. People call her the Hay House Woman. Reporters come to interview her. She sends them away. All she wanted was shelter for her children. She got that. The rest is just weather. She remarries in 1903. Tobias Merkel is a widower with 2 children of his own, a good man who lost his wife to influenza. The blended family lives in the Hay House until 1912, when prosperity allows them to build a larger frame addition on the south side. But the original structure remains used as storage and winter shelter for animals. The walls weather to gray, but the plaster never cracks. Margaret Hayes Merkel dies in February of 1941, 74 years old, in the house she built with bleeding hands and borrowed money and knowledge passed down from a grandmother she left behind in Russia. She is buried in Arthur County beside Henry, her first husband, and Tobias, her second. The stone reads simply, Margaret Hayes Merkel, 1867 to 1941. She believed. Now the memory releases Will completely. He is 65 again, sitting in the house that saved his life, watching his grandson Michael process everything he has heard. And that's the story, Michael. That's how we survived. The boy sits quietly looking around the room as if seeing it for the first time. Finally, he speaks. Your mom built this whole house when you were 5. With some help, but yes, mostly her. Michael stands and walks to the wall, pressing both palms against the plaster. These walls are really 60 years old. Same walls, same hay inside. Will smiles. Feel how warm it is. I haven't fed the fire in 3 hours. He rises slowly, joints protesting the way they do in the cold, and leads Michael to the low section he plastered when he was 5 years old. See this? This is my part. Mama let me do this section, said it was my contribution. Michael traces the uneven surface, the child-sized handprints preserved in lime and time. It's not as smooth as the rest. No, I wasn't very good at it. Will's eyes shine with memory, but Mama left it, never smoothed it over. She said it was perfect because it was mine. Silence falls between them, comfortable and full. Outside, November wind moves across the prairie the way it has moved for thousands of years, indifferent to human shelter. Inside, warmth holds steady. The walls, built by a widow's desperation and a grandmother's wisdom, continue doing what they were meant to do. Protect, preserve, endure. Michael, do you know what the real miracle was? What Grandpa, not the house, not the walls staying warm. The real miracle was Mama believing when no one else did, believing in something her grandmother taught her, believing enough to bet our lives on it. Will's voice drops to nearly a whisper, and being right. Night falls over the prairie. Michael prepares to leave. At the door, he turns back, and in the dim light, he looks younger than 12, as if the story has taken him back to some essential truth about what it means to survive. Grandpa, do you think about that winter a lot? Every day. Because you almost died. No. Will touches the wall one more time and feeling the plaster his mother's hands smoothed 60 years ago. Because I learned what people are capable of. The impossible. When they have to. After Michael leaves, Will stands alone in the house. The fire burns low, shadows gather in corners where light cannot reach. He closes his eyes, and for a moment he is 5 years old again, watching his mother stack bales higher than his head, watching her hands bleed through rags, watching her refuse to surrender to a prairie that wanted them dead. He can almost hear her voice singing Russian lullabies, can almost feel Emily's hand in his small and warm and trusting, can almost hear baby Ben's laugh, the sound that meant life continuing when it might have stopped. The hay bale house still stands, 60 years after a widow with $23 and 3 children decided that dying was not an option. 60 years after neighbors said it would burn or collapse or kill them all. 60 years after the blizzard of 1899 tried to prove those neighbors right and failed. The walls are weathered but sound. The plaster is gray but uncracked. The house remains warm through Nebraska winters that still drop below zero, still blow with wind that searches for weakness, still test every structure humans dare to build on this unforgiving land. Exactly as a grandmother promised across an ocean and a lifetime. Exactly as a desperate mother believed when belief was all she had left. Exactly as a 5-year-old boy learned watching his mother build shelter from grass and hope. Still air holds heat, and so does memory.